Well, I think, first of all, because everybody else is so interested in it. And if it's that captivating, if it's captured the public imagination, and you're a Christian and you care deeply about loving God with all that you are and then loving your neighbor and reaching your neighbor, then this is a great shared point of interest. So that alone is worth familiarizing yourself with critical theory. And also it actually does have some, so I can speak personally, one of my areas of interest when I was doing graduate work as well is literature. I love literature. So one of the benefits of the whole critical theory thrust, which includes deconstructionism and a lot of kind of academic trends that Christians generally see with as fairly unhelpful. Well, one of the helpful things it did, though, was it did actually seek to give voice to people who have been historically marginalized, whether they're persons of color, people of differing sexual orientations, women. So many of these groups that I just named were politically disenfranchised. They weren't given a voice. For a long time, you could study English, for instance, and you would read very few women. You wouldn't read Virginia Woolf or maybe George Eliot. And you certainly wouldn't read many international writers. Think about African writers or South American writers. Well, critical theory in some ways opened the doors for these different voices, and bringing those new perspectives in, I think, constitutes a wonderful enrichment for our education system. So now there's been that's one of the benefits. I'm mentioning that now because so often we only hear about the negatives, and I think there are many negatives. But that's one area where I think we could wholeheartedly say, wonderful that these voices are being heard. Wonderful that we have a more international roster in our English programs and on our reading lists. So I certainly think that's a good thing. But also, yes, I think as Christians, we believe human beings are fallen. Now, our non-Christian neighbors usually will not share that assumption at all. But there's an interesting point of overlap when you look at the deep-seated corruption that you begin to uncover in all human institutions. And the picture isn't one, I would argue, that we just need to simply eradicate these systems and fix society. The problem is actually way more serious than that. This is where Christians look like kind of hardened realists, because we would say, no, it's not. The problem isn't your societal structures. It's not political policies. Those are symptoms of a much deeper disease, and the disease is actually in the human heart. And so you don't need revolution, you actually need transformation of the person from the inside out. But you can build those bridges when you begin to look into some of the insights of critical theory, and you can see that there are points of overlap. So I think there are some real benefits to studying this. There are some real benefits in terms of reaching your neighbor, and also in terms of learning from some of the insights and then bringing them into conversation with our biblical understanding of the human heart.